My father-in-law, Earl, had type 2 diabetes, so bad his blood looked like syrup. But the man was a sugar junkie. He didn't just pair carbs with carbs. He downed a pound of high-sugar pastries every single day, like they were vitamins. As a certified nurse in the nutrition ward, I knew exactly where this road ended: blindness, amputation, and likely dead within 3 years. So in my last life, I stepped up. I took charge of Earl's diet, his insulin, and his exercise. Miraculously, thanks to my professional care, the old bastard didn't develop a single complication and lived to the ripe old age of 85. I thought I had a clear conscience. I thought I saved a life. But on his deathbed, Earl pointed a trembling bony finger at me and rasped it. It's that bitch's fault she wouldn't let me eat sugar. I only lived to 85. If I ate more sugar, I would have lived to 100.
So?
She just wanted me dead, so she could steal the house. You have to avenge me. My husband, Mike, was a spineless mama's boy, and my mother-in-law, Barb, had been subservient to men her whole miserable life. Because of the old man. Senile. Deathbed ramblings, rage overtook them. They shoved me down the emergency exit stairs at the hospital. I died on impact, neck snapped, bleeding out on the cold concrete. I died full of resentment. But when I opened my eyes, I was back. I was reborn. On the day Earl was first diagnosed, just like before, the whole family surrounded me asking for my professional opinion. I took a deep breath, looked at their stupid faces, and said slowly, "I'm just a nurse at a private clinic, guys. My skills aren't that great. We should just follow the doctor's orders." Follow the doctor's orders? Yeah, right. I knew Earl wouldn't listen to a damn word. Fresh back from the clinic in this new timeline, Earl immediately went to the cupboard and pulled out his treats. He grabbed 2 massive, glazed covered donuts and shoved them straight into his mouth. Doctors are all liars and crooks just trying to scam us for money. Earl mumbled through a mouthful of dough, saying, "My fasting glucose is 200, saying I'll go blind or lose a foot."
Bullcrap.
Do I look sick? I feel fine. I'm absolutely not staying in a hospital, and I ain't taking no pills. He shook his head arrogantly, then grabbed a mug of whole milk Barb had loaded with extra sugar. Earl chugged a huge gulp. I watched him, self-righteous and doomed, and let out a cold, silent laugh.
Inside.
His blood sugar was a ticking time bomb. The complications were inevitable. The fact that he didn't feel symptoms yet was just God giving him enough rope to hang himself. In my last life, I would have slapped the donut out of his hand. I would have preached about glycemic index and insulin resistance. But after dying like a dog, I wasn't going to waste a single breath. "Sarah, honey, aren't you a nutrition nurse? Tell him what's what," Barb chirped. It was déjà vu, the same scene. Blood sugar sounds like a made-up term to scare folks. Earl scoffed, shoving a cinnamon roll into his face, cheeks puffing out like a greedy hamster, staring me down, thinking about his syrup-thick blood. I swallowed hard. I swallowed my advice right along with my spit. "Dad," I said, putting on my best innocent face. I mean, I did study nursing, but I'm not a specialist in diabetes. Honestly, sticking to what the doctor said is probably best.
But you know your body best.
I exhaled, relieved. I had just strangled the tragedy of my past life in its cradle.
Last time.
I rushed forward, patted his back, and literally caught the chewed-up pastry he spat out. I gave a PowerPoint presentation on death and decay. Even though he didn't believe me then, the doctor, and I forced him into submission. I quit my job. I stayed by his side 24/7. Earl had a nasty temper. When the sugar withdrawal hit, he smashed things. Once, he threw a heavy glass ashtray at my head because I hid the cookies. I almost passed out from the blood loss. "You're torturing me on purpose. I'm gonna make Mike divorce you," Earl would scream, standing on a chair with newfound energy thanks to my diet plan. Mike and Barb hated me too, constantly whining, but they feared the doctor's bills. So they listened. I heard Barb whisper to Mike more than once, "Look at that wife of yours torturing your poor father at his age." Back then, I ignored it. Now I realized the knife had been at my throat the whole time. For lunch, make some sweet and sour pork and fry up some dumplings. Maybe boil some pasta too, Earl demanded, snapping me back to reality.
I didn't object.
"Sure thing, Dad." I smiled. I really wanted to see how many months he'd last without me. Playing goalkeeper. Optometrists these days are shameless scammers. I just got these reading glasses and they're already trash. Earl was cursing, holding a pair of glasses he bought less than a month ago. For the past year, his vision had been blurring. He kept buying new glasses, thinking the store was ripping him off. Barb and Earl thought it was bad customer service. I knew the truth. High blood sugar was changing the osmotic pressure in his eyes' lenses, screwing up his focus. If left unchecked, His retinas were going to detach, or his eyes would hemorrhage. Tommy, come here. Grandpa bought treats and soda, Earl yelled. Every weekend, Mike and I took our 7-year-old son, Tommy, to visit his grandparents. And every time, Earl and Barb tried to stuff Tommy full of sugar like he was a Fowie. Grog goose. Get grandparents wanting to spoil the kid. A little candy is fine. But putting soda in a sippy cup and treating it like water?
Heno, Tommy.
Look, Grandpa got crates of soda. Drink as much as you want this weekend. Tommy looked at me fearfully, afraid to take the bottle from Earl's trembling hand. Seeing Tommy hesitate, Earl assumed I had brainwashed the kid. His temper flared instantly. Always with the healthy diet crap. Look at the kid. You're starving him. He's not fat at all. If you can't raise him right, give him to us. In their twisted minds, a child wasn't healthy unless they were obese. I knew better. Processed sugar was poison. Because I controlled Tommy's diet, they were constantly trying to take custody of him.
Past life or this life.
I wasn't letting my son turn into a diabetic before puberty. Drink it, grandson. If your mom dares to yell at you, I'll curse her out. Earl practically forced the bottle into Tommy's hand and sneered at me, trying to assert dominance. Grandpa, I don't want soda. I want water. I don't want to get sick. Tommy whispered. He'd learned well from me. Hearing this, the old man exploded. He slammed the bottle on the table.
Sick.
What?
Sick?
I'm over 70. I eat cakes and drink soda every day. Look at me. I'm healthy as a horse. Drink it. Don't be scared of that woman. I watched speechless. Age really doesn't bring wisdom. This 70-year-old was dumber than a toddler. Earl twisted the cap off violently and out of spite, tried to pour it directly into Tommy's mouth. Tommy burst into tears. That was it. I snatched the bottle, pulled Tommy into my arms, but I didn't scream like last time. Hard confrontations just made Earl act crazier. I needed him to rot faster, not fight me. I switched tactics immediately. Dad, who said I don't let Tommy drink soda. It's just that Tommy brought his own drink. Tommy, grab your bottle from the bag.
Cheers with Grandpa.
Tommy stopped crying, ran to his backpack, and pulled out a colorful bottle with fresh squeezed orange juice. Grandpa, let's cheers. See who drinks the most. Tommy took a sip. I take a small sip. Grandpa takes a big gulp. Earl's anger vanished. He chugged half the liter of soda in one go. You got it. Tommy takes a sip. Grandpa drinks the whole bottle. I watched the level of sugary sludge lower in Earl's bottle. A small dark smile touching my lips. Give it a month, just 1 month. His complications were going to hit him like a freight train. Dinner that night was a feast of self-destruction. True to his word, Earl demanded sweet and sour pork. In my past life, I would have used a sugar substitute or barely glazed the meat. This time, I caramelized the sugar until it was a thick, amber shellacking. I made the dumplings deep-fried, not steamed, and served it all with a mound of white rice and a side of pasta salad drowning in mayonnaise. Now this, Earl grunted, grease shining on his chin, is food. None of that rabbit food you used to push. Mike shoveled food into his mouth, nodding in agreement. Mom always said you were too controlling with the kitchen, Sarah. Dad's earned the right to eat what he wants. You're right, I said softly, picking at a small salad I'd made for myself and Tommy. I was overstepping. Dad, do you want more sauce? Pour it on, Earl commanded. I watched him eat. It wasn't just hunger, it was a compulsive, chemical need. His body was starving for energy because his insulin resistance was blocking the glucose from entering his cells, so he ate more, spiking his blood sugar higher, creating a vicious cycle of toxicity. That night, the thirst set in. I lay in bed next to Mike, listening to the house settle. Every 40 minutes, heavy footsteps thudded down the hallway. Earl going to the bathroom. Then, the clinking of the refrigerator door. The hiss of a soda bottle opening. Polyuria and polydipsia. Excessive urination followed by excessive thirst. His kidneys were working overtime, trying to flush the syrup from his veins, dehydrating him rapidly. Mike stirred, annoyed. Dad's up again? What is he doing? Probably just thirsty, I whispered, turning my back to him. It's hot tonight. It wasn't hot. It was November. Over the next 3 weeks, the decline was subtle to them, but glaring to me. Earl became irritable. His mood swung from manic highs after a meal to lethargic, aggressive lows 2 hours later. He started napping constantly, passing out in his armchair with his mouth open, snoring with a rattle that sounded like fluid in the lungs. One Saturday, while I was helping Tommy with his homework, a crash echoed from the kitchen. I walked in to find Earl on the floor, surrounded by shattered ceramic. He had dropped his favorite coffee mug. Damn thing is slippery, he roared, face purple with rage. He looked at his hands, confused. My fingers, they feel numb. Must be the cold weather. Peripheral neuropathy. The high sugar was destroying the nerve endings in his extremities. He was losing his grip strength. "Let me clean that up, Dad," I said, grabbing a broom. "Don't move, there's glass everywhere." "I'm not an invalid." He tried to stand, but his balance wavered. He stepped right on a jagged shard of ceramic. I saw the shard pierce his thick wool sock. It went deep. I held my breath. In a normal person, the pain would be immediate. A yelp, a curse, a hopping on one foot. Earl just stood there. He didn't feel a thing. "Dad, your foot." I pointed. He looked down. A dark stain was spreading on the gray wool.
Huh.
Must have nicked me. Didn't even feel it. Tough old skin. He pulled the shard out. Blood gushed freely, dark and slow. "I'll get the first aid kit," Barb fussed, rushing in. "Oh, Earl, look at you. Just put some peroxide on it and wrap it up," Earl dismissed. "I'm going to watch the game." In my last life, I would have packed him into the car and driven straight to the ER. A diabetic foot wound is a death sentence if untreated. "Make sure you wrap it tight, Mom," I said helpfully. "And Dad, maybe soak it in hot water later to clean it out." "Good idea," Earl grunted. I walked away, hiding the trembling in my hands. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. Soaking a diabetic foot in hot water was dangerous. They couldn't feel the temperature, leading to burns that wouldn't heal. I wasn't killing him. I was just letting him hold the gun. 2 months passed. The house began to smell. At first, it was faint, a sickly sweet, yeasty odor, like rotting apples. It was the smell of ketones on Earl's breath, combined with something more sinister emanating from his foot. Earl had stopped leaving the house. He claimed his sciatica was acting up, but I knew the truth. His vision was so blurry, he couldn't drive, and his foot was a swollen, weeping mess. Barb was in denial. "It's just a slow healer," she told Mike over the phone. "We're putting honey on it. An old remedy." Honey.
Pure sugar.
Feeding the bacteria. I continued to go to work, continued to care for Tommy, and kept my interactions with Earl to a polite minimum. I started quietly transferring my salary into a separate account that Mike couldn't access, claiming it was a college fund for Tommy that had strict withdrawal rules. One evening, Mike came home early. He walked into the living room and gagged. "Jesus, what is that smell?" Earl was on the couch, his foot propped up on a pillow, wrapped in a filthy bandage. "It's your father's foot," Barb said, looking exhausted. She had aged 10 years in 2 months. "I changed the bandages, but it keeps weeping." "Let me see," Mike said. "Don't touch it." Earl snapped. "It hurts like hell if you poke it, but it feels dead otherwise." Mike peeled back the gauze. I watched from the doorway. The flesh wasn't just infected, it was necrotic. The toes were turning black, a stark contrast to the angry red inflammation climbing up his shin. "Gangrene." Mike recoiled, covering his mouth. "Dad, that looks bad. Like really bad. You need a doctor." "No doctors," Earl shouted, throwing a pillow. "They'll just want to cut it off. I know their game. They charge $10,000 just to tell you to lose weight."
I'm not going.
"But Dad." "Sarah?" Mike turned to me, panic in his eyes. "You're a nurse. Do something. Clean it properly." I stepped forward, my face a mask of concern. I inspected the wound, holding my breath against the stench of decaying meat. "Mike, I work in nutrition, not wound care," I lied smoothly. "I can bandage it, but this looks like, well, it looks like advanced tissue necrosis." "But Dad says he feels fine, right?" "I feel fine."
Earlit.
He was sweating profusely, his skin gray and clammy. "Just get me a soda. My throat is dry." "See." I shrugged. If he was septic, he'd have a fever. Maybe it's just a surface infection. "Fix it, Sarah," Mike demanded, his voice dropping to that bullying tone he used when he was scared. "You're the wife. It's your job to take care of the family's health." "I am," I said, handing Earl a fresh bottle of cola. "I'm giving him exactly what he asks for." The end of the home remedy phase came 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday. I was at work when I got the call. It was Barb, screaming hysterically. "He won't wake up. Earl won't wake up. He's breathing funny, like he's gasping for air. Kuzmal breathing. The body's desperate attempt to blow off carbon dioxide because the blood has turned acidic from diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA." "Call 911, Barb," I said calmly. You come home. You come home right now." "I can't save him, Barb. He needs a hospital." "Call 911. I hung up and finished my shift. I needed the overtime pay. When I arrived at the hospital 4 hours later, the scene was chaotic. Mike was pacing the hallway, red-faced. Barb was sobbing in a plastic chair. Dr. Reynolds, a stern man with no patience for neglect, walked out of the ICU. He spotted me. I was still in my scrubs. "Are you the daughter?" he asked. "Daughter-in-law," I said. "I'm a nurse at the Uptown Clinic." Dr. Reynolds' eyes narrowed. "You're a nurse? And you let it get this far?" Before I could speak, Mike interjected, trying to save face. My wife kept telling him to eat better, but he wouldn't listen. I looked at Dr. Reynolds. My father-in-law was difficult. He believed doctors were scammers. He threw things at me if I tried to check his sugar. He refused insulin. His blood glucose was over 800 upon admission, Reynolds said, his voice cold. His blood is practically acid. And the foot. I've seen corpses with better tissue integrity. We have to amputate immediately. Below the knee, maybe above if the infection has spread to the bone marrow.
No.
Barb wailed. He said no amputation. He'll kill himself if he wakes up with no leg. If we don't cut it off, he will be dead by morning from sepsis, the doctor said flatly. Sign the papers. Mike signed with a shaking hand. The surgery took 4 hours. Earl survived, but just barely. When he woke up in the recovery room 2 days later, the reality set in. I stood in the back of the room while Mike and Barb hovered over him. Earl looked down at the flat sheet where his left leg used to be. He blinked, his brain sluggish from the anesthesia and the stroke he had suffered during the coma. A minor one, but enough to slur his speech and droop the right side of his face. Where? He rasped. Where is it? Dad, they had to. Mike sobbed. It was gangrene. Earl's face twisted into a rictus of horror and rage. He tried to sit up, but he was too weak. His eyes darted around the room until they landed on me. You. He gurgled. You let this happen. Me? I stepped forward, my voice bright and innocent. Dad, I told you to listen to the doctor months ago. You said they were scammers. You said you were healthy as a horse. You witch. Save your strength, Earl. I said. You have a long recovery ahead. Earl didn't die. That would have been too easy. He came home 3 weeks later. He was now a wheelchair-bound, half-blind, one-leg diabetic with a foul temper and a bladder he couldn't control. The hospital bill was astronomical. Earl's insurance covered some, but the specialized care, the surgery, and the ICU stay left a balance of nearly $45,000. We can't pay this, Mike said, staring at the bill at the kitchen table.
He looked at me.
How much do you have in savings? None, I said. I paid for Tommy's tuition and the car repairs. You have to have something. Ask your parents.
No.
What do you mean, no? Mike stood up, slamming his hand on the table. I mean, this is your father's debt. He wanted to eat sugar? He pays the price. I'm not bankrupting our son's future for Earl's donuts. You selfish bitch, Mike hissed. Mom is struggling. She can't lift him alone. You need to quit your job and take care of him. We can save money on a nurse if you do it. There it was. The trap from the last life. I earn more than you do, Mike, I pointed out. If anyone should quit, it's you. Mike was a warehouse manager. I was a specialized nutrition nurse. My salary was indeed higher. I'm the man. I don't wipe asses, Mike screamed. Neither do I said calmly. Not anymore. The next month was a living hell for Barb. She was frail, and Earl was heavy. He refused to do his physical therapy. He would soil himself and scream for Barb to clean it up, then berate her for being too slow. He demanded sweets constantly, threatening to starve himself if he didn't get them. Barb gave in, of course. She fed him cake in bed. His sugar stayed high. The incision on his stump wasn't healing well. I watched them crumble. Barb lost 20 pounds from stress. Mike started drinking heavily to avoid coming home. I focused on Tommy. I kept him out of the house as much as possible, enrolling him in soccer, art class, anything. Mom, Grandpa scares me, Tommy whispered one night. He looks like a monster. He's sick, baby. Bad choices make you sick. One Friday night, I came home to find the house in chaos. Earl had tried to get out of his wheelchair to reach a box of cookies on the high shelf. He had fallen, bringing the shelf down with him. He was lying on the floor, covered in flour and broken glass, screaming at Barb, calling her useless, calling her a slave. Mike was there, trying to lift him. You. Earl pointed a shaking finger at me as I entered. Help me up.
I'm hungry.
I'm not lifting you, Earl. You're dead weight, I said, stepping over a pile of debris to get to the fridge. Mike. Hit her. Teach her a lesson. Earl shrieked. Mike, drunk and stressed, turned to me. His eyes were red. Just help him, Sarah. Why do you have to be so cold? I'm cold. I laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound. He threw an ashtray at my head in another life, Mike. Oh wait, you don't remember that. But I remember the way you looked at me when I tried to save him. You hated me for stopping him. Now I'm letting him be free, and you hate me for that too. Shut up. Mike lunged at me. I sidestepped. He crashed into the counter. Don't touch me, I said, my voice dropping an octave. If you touch me, I call the police. And I have cameras, Mike. I pointed to the small nanny cam on the bookshelf, the one I'd installed weeks ago, to check on Tommy. Mike froze. You recorded us? I recorded everything. Earl's abuse. Your negligence. Barb feeding him sugar against medical advice. If we divorce, I get full custody. You won't see Tommy again. Divorce? Barb gasped from the floor where she was kneeling. You can't leave. We need the money. We need help. I'm done, I said. I've been looking for an apartment. I signed a lease yesterday. I'm taking Tommy. You can't take my grandson, Earl roared, dragging himself across the floor like a wounded slug. He belongs to the family. He belongs to the living, I said, looking down at him. And you, Earl? You're already a corpse. You just haven't stopped moving yet. I went upstairs, grabbed the bags I had packed days ago, woke up Tommy and walked out. Mike stood in the kitchen, paralyzed by the threat of the video footage and the sudden realization that his ATM and housekeeper was walking out the door. I moved into a clean, quiet apartment 3 blocks from Tommy's school. The silence was beautiful. No screaming, no smell of gangrene, no walking on eggshells. I filed for divorce the next week. I submitted the footage of Earl's violent outbursts and Mike's drunken aggression to the family court. It was brutal. Mike didn't have a leg to stand on metaphorically, unlike his father. I got full custody. Mike got visitation rights, but only supervised because I proved the environment at his house was unsafe for a child due to medical biohazards and emotional abuse. 6 months passed. I heard updates through the grapevine. Without my salary, they couldn't afford the mortgage and the medical bills. They had to sell the house Earl accused me of wanting to steal. They moved into a cramped, ground floor rental. Barb's health collapsed. She had a heart attack from the stress of lifting Earl and dealing with his rages. She survived, but she couldn't care for him anymore. Mike had to quit his job to become the full-time caregiver. He was miserable. He called me once, drunk, at 2 a.m. It's all your fault, TSL. I tried, Mike, I said into the phone. Remember? He's rotting.
Come back. Please.
We'll do whatever you want.
No.
I hung up and blocked the number. Earl lasted. He eventually lost the second leg. Then his kidneys failed completely. He died on a humid Tuesday in August. I didn't go to the funeral. I sent Arist in peace. Tommy asked if he should go. I told him it. A week after the funeral, I was walking out of the grocery store when I saw them. Mike and they looked like wraiths. Barb was in a wheelchair now, too weak to walk. Mike looked 50. They didn't see me. I was wearing a bright yellow dress, holding a basket of fresh veggie. I paused for a moment, watching them. In this life, I breathed in the fresh air. Mom.
Tommy.
I smiled. Sure, sweetie. A small. I got into my car and drove away, leaving the ghosts in the parking lot. Earl.